Well, I think it's really, we're in an amazing time right now because Snoop is being attacked on a lot of different fronts, from the Long Beach Crips to Big Flossie and them to the media and some of the kind of harebrained things I think he's doing these days. He's being seen in a much different light. I'm not going to say what the true light is, but I think the public sees for themselves, what's real and what's not. And if you look at it through today's eyes, as we look at these people and who they are and what they've become, it kind of lets us understand a little bit more about the animal that they were back in the day. And so when we look at that, we say, okay, what was his relationship with Pac? Well, to say that relationship was strained was, kind of the understatement of the year, because even deeper than the relationship that Snoop had with Pac and the problems that they had was really a bigger problem between the Dog Pound, who were largely a Crip-based set, and the Death Row artists and the Outlaws and the people that were there that were of the Blood, the Pyru set. And sort of that natural rivalry that they did their best to overcome for the sake of making a buck. But, it was always there, and that undercurrent was always there. So, you're already starting with the glass half full of animosity when you look at the relationship between the Crips and the Bloods, trying to make it work. So it's kind of a stacked deck. Then you take their big guy, Snoop, who's making some money for the record label, who's doing some good things for the record label, and then on a big power play, Suge brings in Tupac, who's a grand slam home run hitter. Now you've got Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth on the same team. And so that would naturally just escalate things further. One of the things I think that we bring out in the movie was that, Pac found out after he got to work with Bo Dre and Snoop, that's why he wanted to go to Death Row, that he didn't like either one of them when it came right down to it. And so having that, background and understanding that, yeah, there was some tension between the two of them, and I think that's ultimately what led to the events of September 7th.
So okay, and from from there we can tie it obviously to the LAPD and whatnot. But you had a scene in the film where Tupac's aunt says Tupac was not a gangster, and there was people, his manager, I believe I forget his name. Pac said he wanted to go to Death Row, wanted to work with Snoop and Dre and everything, and they advised him not to do it.
Right, Adrian Gregory, yeah.
Yeah, they advised him not to go, but his aunt said he wasn't a gangster. Was Pac just like guilty by association, pretty much? Is that what you're saying? Or was he a full-blown gangster?
No, I think that Pac, it's an interesting thing. Frank Alexander said that Pac wasn't red or blue. Pac's color was green, and that was the color of money. That was the thing.
Yeah.
But the people, you got to look at it this way. In the assassination movies overall, I've interviewed at least a dozen people that were, you can't find people that were closer to Tupac than a Tracy Robinson, Layla Steinberg, Adrian Gregory, Frank Alexander. These people that were with him every single day, in the studio, out of the studio, at home, all of these people that knew him have all said the same thing. They said that he was not a gangster, that he had no desire to be tied up with the gangs officially. However, there's a certain mystique that's with it, and I think it's kind of parallel to Snoop's relationship with the Crips. You're not really officially a part of it, but you're kind of borrowing off of that street cred that they've given you by association. So I think the best way to explain Pac's situation was that, and we try to explain this in the movie, that there's a fast-moving river. Picture yourself coming to the banks of a river that's moving very, very fast, and at the end of that river, there's a waterfall. There's a cliff, okay? Basically, what that waterfall was the flow of all the bad things that were going on at the time, and I look at Tupac as being thrown in the river. He kind of jumped in the river himself, actually, and he found himself carried away by that river, and, of course, over the cliff we go. And that was kind of the visual I had in my mind when we put Assassination together, to give you that, show you the river, show you how fast it was moving and how dangerous it was, and then show you how Pac jumped into that river. And there's all kinds of treachery in that river, including dog pound. I mean, they didn't like Pac. They were always competing for time. They had it in. You heard Daz. They had no love for Suge or Pac, either one. In that letter, it speaks to, and then of course a statement. And I actually emailed you a copy of the statement that was given to us, so you'd have it. Chris Blackford. I mean, they were told flat out that Danny Patton, Malcolm Patton, and Lil Half Dead were the three that were in the car. Okay, and that there were shooters, and there was a driver, and that's what the letter says. Now, you go in and you look at the letter and you say, okay, who are all these people? Well, I emailed you, and you can you put it up if you want to put it up on your on your YouTube or to show it or whatever the case might be. I sent you a copy of Yaku Fula's statement to the Las Vegas Police Department that has a description of the driver. Yak Fula was the one who was the closest to the vehicle that was the shooters, and he gave a description to the Las Vegas Police Department about what the driver of the car looked like. He never said he saw the shooter, but he saw the driver. And if you look at the picture of his explanation of what Yak Fula says is the driver, and you look at the picture of Danny Patton, you draw your own conclusions, okay? But you can't deny that there's a passing resemblance between that person and the description that Yak Fula gave Las Vegas police. You just can't. You can't get past it. And, yeah, they could say, well, sure, it could be anybody. But, I mean, when you think about it, what are the odds? When you go back and you look at probabilities and you look at, like, let's say you're a Vegas odds maker, what are the odds that some gang guy or some paranoid schizophrenic, I think Greg Kading called Saria paranoid schizophrenic, and it was all made up, who would know that Lil Half Dead got traded to Priority Records from Death Row Records? What gang person would know that? How would they know anything about the record industry? How would they know how important that was and how significant it was that a member of the Dog Pound got shuttled away from Death Row Records and got sent down to Priority Records, which was at the time kind of like the second-class citizen, okay? Whereas Suge could make money off them, but Priority wasn't Death Row. You understand what I mean? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me, RJ?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't lose you. I got
when you throw Lil Half Dead in the mix, that goes back to the beginning of the interview when we was talking about the Snoop Pac beef. Do you think there was anything that was going on there with Lil Half Dead? I mean, he was a Crip, but then a lot of the police officers were Bloods.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
sure,
there's tension between the Bloods and the Crips at the label, but according to this, the Crips are the ones who killed Pac then.
Well, it's a very interesting thing that you point out, because according to the letter, they were going to the Pyrus themselves were going to take out Suge. Okay, that was already a given. The Pyrus, the Bloods themselves, were going to take out Suge. And you think to yourself, why would they do that? Well, I mean, if you've watched any mob movie or you watch any, Goodfellas, or you watch anything like that, I mean, all these wise guys, they get clipped by their own people constantly, okay? And it's the guys that they think are their friends. They turn around and they say, hey, good to see you. Bang, they get shot in the head, okay? I mean, this is not unusual. This is nothing new. But the thing about it, and this is what we believe, and of course, like I said, Suge has pretty well endorsed what we have to say at this point. And what we have to say is that we believe Suge knew who the driver was. He saw the shooter, knew who the shooters were. He knew that they were Pyrus. He knew that they were his own group, people that he knew. So what does that tell you? If you look at the face of somebody who's from your own crew and they're the ones shooting at you, who's your friend at that point? No one. No one's your friend. Who are you going to snitch on? Who are you going to retaliate against? Your own people?
Yeah.
So you're kind of in a screwed position to begin with. So they had that. Now, according to the letter, Lil Half Dead had just been kind of badly dealt with by Tupac, according to the letter. And everybody laughs the whole Brenda's Got a Baby, and I want to just talk about that for a second because it's so important that we get that out. Everybody laughs and says, oh, Pac wrote Brenda's Got a Baby. This is stupid. This letter is stupid. Ha ha. He says Lil Half Dead wrote Brenda's Got a Baby. Well, that's just stupid because Lil Half Dead could never have written Brenda's Got a Baby. Pac wrote Brenda's Got a Baby. I was there. I saw Pac write it. Okay. Got it. Make sense? Absolutely. Here's the deal with that. You can't just laugh it off. You can't just write it off, and I'll tell you why. Because if Lil Half Dead, for whatever reason, thought that Pac had taken a song of his and made it into Brenda's Got a Baby, it doesn't mean that Pac didn't write the song. Pac could have written the whole song all by himself. But if Lil Half Dead just gets it in his mind that Pac ripped him off, and you know how people are. I mean, there's people all the time see something and say, oh, yeah, they took my idea. Okay, maybe they didn't, but maybe you think they did. And so if that's your perception, if that's your reality, if that's what you're telling other people, okay, whether or not even that's bullshit, he may have been just bullshitting somebody and just trying to take claim for something that, wasn't true. Maybe he was just bullshitting. But what we're getting at here is that no matter what, either it was complete bullshit or maybe he really believed at the time that Pac had ripped him off. It doesn't mean that Pac ripped him off, and it doesn't mean that Pac didn't write Brenda's Got a Baby. What it means is exactly that Lil Half Dead, for whatever reason, at that time, thought he got ripped off. He thought that Pac was ripping him off with Brenda's Got a Baby. So I don't know how people can just dismiss the letter out and say, oh, it's a joke because Pac wrote Brenda's Got a Baby. Lil Half Dead never wrote that. Well, that could be true. But that doesn't mean that Lil Half Dead didn't feel like he had been ripped off. You understand what I'm saying? How many beefs, how many killings, how many beefs, how many beatings have happened over somebody's bad perception?
Yeah.
Somebody believes something that's not true. It's not true, but you can't convince them that it's not true. They just believe it for whatever reason. I mean, entire civilizations have gone to war over bad perception. So I wouldn't be so quick. I wouldn't be so quick. I wouldn't be so quick to sit there and look at that letter and say, "Oh well, Lil Half Dead said Pac wrote Brenda's Got a Baby." Well, that's just stupid. Well, not if it's his perception. Okay, the letter doesn't say that in fact Lil Half Dead did write Brenda's Got a Baby and Tupac ripped it off. That's not what the letter says. The letter says that there was a problem with demo stealing, which we know is true, and it also mentions that Lil Half Dead felt like he had been ripped off by Tupac. So I'm not here to put, you and I can't think for Lil Half Dead. We can't put thoughts in his mind. We can't say what he did or what he didn't think. We can't do that. All we can do is go off of what it says. And if it makes any kind of sense at all, like the demo stealing, if it makes any kind of sense at all, that Lil Half Dead may have believed at the time that he'd been ripped off, he's going to confront Pac about it. And that leads to the beatings. Did he get beat up? Well, it was pretty common practice for Pac to beat up people. And not to say he didn't beat him up. He usually throw the first sucker punch, and then the rest of the gang would come in and finish the job for him. But, Atron, there's so many people, Shock G, that would talk about Pac just getting into fights for no reason. He would just start a fight for no apparent reason. So for them to say that Lil Half Dead challenged Pac about something, it doesn't say, funny enough in the letter, again, this is from 1998, it doesn't say that Pac was beat up that Lil Half Dead was beat up by Pac. It doesn't say that at all. It says that Lil Half Dead was beat up by Pac soldiers. Now, if you know anything about Pac, and most of the people I've talked to do, that's how it always went. And in fact, that's how it went at the MGM, didn't it?
Yeah.
Pac threw that first punch, and everybody else jumped in after that. In fact, Frank had drugged Pac away by the time Buntry got in there. Pac was already out of the fight. So when you look at Pac, when you look at how this works,
him walking out with him real fast.
Right. So think about this for a minute. Now you go back to the letter that was written in 1998. Nobody's seen it since that day, all right? And you put that in there and you look at that Tupac got beat up by half-dead soldiers. What kind of gang guy would make that up and not understand the significance of what that meant? I mean, what, are you just throwing a dart at a dartboard? You're just making some shit up that just happens to be historically accurate with everything else that the guy's done? I mean, how well do you know Tupac at that point? These guys didn't know Tupac at all. Patton's didn't know him at all. When you look at the details that are in this letter, you look at the things that were done and the historical precedent of it, how could you sit there and say that there's not some level of accuracy or legitimacy to it? Because who'd make this up?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get that close?